Welcome to our very first GrandPod podcast, hosted by me, Heather Young, COO for Grandir UK, and your podcast host. This was an idea that was pitched to us by the wonderful Region E nursery managers to support with communication and learning at Grandir UK. On these podcasts, you will hear from team members sharing important information or updates that matter to you. So let's get started. Welcome to episode 1 of our very first podcast for Grandir UK. Today we're going to be talking all things apprenticeships, and I'm joined by our special guest, Cathy Agozzino, who is our Apprenticeship and Learner Coordinator for Grandir UK. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you very much, Heather. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here. But before we're going to delve into the conversation, could you share with our listeners a little bit about your role and how long you've been at Grandir UK and the role that you do here?
I've been at Grandir UK for just over 5 years. In my current role as the Apprentice and Learner Coordinator, I've been working for just over a year. I came into early years quite late in life, really, into my 40s. I used to run music and dance classes within the local community for little ones, and that's where I fell in love with early years. And I used to go into nurseries, and that's where I fell in love with the nursery environment. So I decided to study for my level 3 qualification. And after gaining my level 3 qualification, I then became manager of a setting and went on to study a degree in early years. The degree was a working degree, so I very much put everything that I learned academically into practice. I had to evidence that in practice. And I guess apprenticeships are very much like that, you're working and you're learning at the same time. So to me, that's where I draw the comparisons, and that's why I love my job, because I can really see the benefits of working alongside learning and putting that learning into practice that then has the impact on the families and the children that you're looking after.
Wow, so you've done both the role of an early years practitioner and a leadership role within early years, and you've done your training yourself. Yes. When you did your training, did you do it via an apprenticeship route?
No. So the level 6 that I did, the degree, that wasn't an apprenticeship route, but as I say, it was very much a working degree. So very similar to the apprenticeship in that you had to evidence your learning in your actual practice, but it wasn't an apprenticeship as such, although you can do higher level sort of apprenticeships that are equivalent to degrees.
Right, okay. So why the interest in doing the role here? What do you love about doing the role with our apprentices here? And what type of apprenticeship programs do we offer at Grandir UK?
Okay, so what I love about working here is I get to work with a lot of lovely people. I mean, you'll know, Heather, that early years is a real nurturing environment, and what a fabulous environment for apprentices to work in. That whole nurture piece. Where we're really looking after our employees, and I think Grandir do that really, really well. Our nursery teams, they really put their arms around their apprentices and they do everything they can to ensure that they are successful and thriving, and they go on to complete their apprenticeships. So we offer all sorts of apprenticeships through Grandir UK, and we work really closely with Realise, our training provider, who will offer anything from a level 2 apprenticeship in early years, which is sort of your baseline, and then you have your level 3s, and then there's the level 5 apprenticeship. And we can access higher level apprenticeships as well, and we actually, within our support office, we have got staff that are doing sort of the equivalent of a degree level apprenticeship. So we literally start here and we go there. So the sky's the limit really for where you can go with apprenticeships. And for me, the fact that you're evidencing what you're learning and putting it into practice, that is really good practice, because you've got the best of both worlds and you're earning money. So when I was doing my degree, I was earning money because it was a working degree. So it was very much like an apprenticeship, but I didn't have the time off the job to do my degree. So within an apprenticeship, you get 20%, 6 hours a week, off the job learning time. That wouldn't necessarily mean that you're studying at home, you're coming out of your room. You have the time to sort of discover new skills, knowledge, behaviours, but in the working environment.
Okay,
so you've got that opportunity to do that, whereas if you're doing another route, you don't necessarily get the opportunity to do to get that sort of chance
experience.
to
I did the same when I did
things.
my nursery qualification when I was way back when I was in my late teens, which feels very long ago now. I went through college for 3 years, and whilst we did work placements, which was always enjoyable because that's where you got your experience and your real interaction with the children, to be in a college learning environment,
it's very different,
really
isn't
different.
it? Yeah,
I
really
don't
different.
think you get the real understanding of what early years is like.
It's not real life, is
No.
it really? You don't get to see those real wow moments that you get when you're working alongside learning. You don't get to perhaps experience the interactions with the rest of the team.
Exactly, and I think it's more than that, Cathy. I think it's definitely the learning for early years and practice and training on child development and all of the aspects that you need to learn. But I think it's also about being in employment. A lot of our apprentices, I assume, are quite young, coming into their first jobs, and actually learning about being part of a team in a nursery,
life skills.
learning about how to interact with your colleagues, learning about leadership in a setting and being led by somebody. That they're all different to what these guys would experience if they were studying at a college or
absolutely. And I think what's really lovely about our company in particular is that our nursery teams, they really support our young apprentices. Some of these are 16-year-olds, barely 16, that are coming straight from school, so they haven't got those real life experiences, but our nursery teams, they really look after the young apprentices, and they really make sure that they know that sort of something as simple as what bus you've got to take, because obviously they're not driving, they'll put their arms around them and they'll give them their life skills, whereas I don't think you'd necessarily get that if you were doing a route the way that you did it, Heather, or that I did it.
Nobody got my bus to work for me.
No, that's it. No, or nobody would have told you perhaps what route you needed to take. Nobody would have told you perhaps who to expect when you went to your placement. Whereas I think doing the apprenticeship route, and what we do particularly well is our teams, they equip those youngsters with those things that you might not necessarily think about, and I think we do that really well.
So would you say that as well as delivering the training that we do to our apprenticeships in partnership with Realise, are we really focused on their well-being? And
majorly so, majorly so. Going back to sort of saying that the majority of apprentices are very young, very fresh, very raw. They haven't got those life experiences, and I think particularly since COVID as well, the generation of apprentices that we're seeing coming at the moment, you've got to remember that a lot of these youngsters have spent an enormous amount of time at home, so they wouldn't necessarily have those life experiences. And I think doing an apprenticeship, and particularly with Grandir UK, where you've got these supportive teams, you can gain those real sort of basic skills, those life experiences, and that those nursery teams have got your back. They're going to look after you, and you've got somewhere to go for support.
I think it's a great route. I think for me, if I was back, when I decided I wanted to become a nursery nurse and doing my training, those opportunities were not as present then as they are now. So I think for me, it would have been a great way to really learn on the job and really learn. I think I remember going into my first job after leaving college as a qualified nursery nurse, thinking, I know what I'm doing now, but actually what I found harder was actually being in employment and starting to be a grown-up and having responsibilities.
It's a big transition, isn't it, I think? And whereas if you've got that kind of both of those aspects in one, and that's what an apprenticeship is all about, you can really expand your horizons, and like I say, that you've got somebody that's got your back on it. And I think that the well-being piece we do particularly well at Grandir UK. We've got fabulous teams out there looking out for all our apprentices, and hey, we're talking about young apprentices, but actually I came into early years in my 40s, and I know that we've got people within the company that I can think of a lady, Tara, in Grange Park, in our Grange Park Kiddie Carew nursery, that she so desperately wanted to become qualified, but for various reasons didn't have the opportunity to do that. And then when she joined Grandir UK, was given the opportunity and actually completed her level 3 apprenticeship at age 50.
Excellent.
So,
Wonderful.
you know, we talk about the young apprentices, and I think the myth is that apprenticeships are just for young people, but actually, I mean, anybody within our support office or our nursery teams can access an apprenticeship if it's something they're really interested in.
And look, we have to actively promote the training from within, because we know there's such a shortage in the sector of qualified early years professionals, that we have a real duty to bring those people back into this sector. It's such a privileged sector to work in,
massively so,
and you know, such a rewarding sector to work in. The more we can help people achieve their qualifications. So Cathy, if I guess there's 2 routes, isn't there, to come in? So you can come in either on an apprenticeship programme or as an employee joining. So could you talk a little bit about that?
If you were employed by us as an apprentice, then you would be on the apprenticeship wage, and you would be very much straight in as an apprentice, straight into training. But that's not to say if you're already working in a nursery, you can access an apprenticeship. As long as you've done 6 months service with us, then we can put you onto the apprenticeship programme, and you can do exactly the same route as an apprentice is doing. So apprenticeships really are very, very accessible. We also have other routes to qualification as well. We've got something called the Adult Education Budget. That's what the government call it. And it's another route to learning. It's a fast track route to learning, but it's very different to an apprenticeship in the fact that actually you don't get that wider support, I would say, and a lot of the learning that you do is very much like your college sort of route to qualification, or your uni route to qualification. So you can still gain that qualification, but it's a very different route, and I would say it's a really good route because it's quite fast. You don't have an endpoint assessment, and you don't get the off the job sort of time to discover those knowledge, skills and behaviours, but it is a full and relevant recognised qualification, and that is something you can do through Grandir UK as well. That's something that Realise provide as our preferred training provider, and they're amazing. We're really lucky actually that we've got a sole provider that are fully committed and as passionate about you know, early years as we are, and looking after sort of apprenticeships and anybody wanting to do a qualification.
They're a great provider actually. We've had quite a long relationship now with Realise, and I think they're certainly one of the better providers that we have partnered with. Just go back to the AUB route, it was interesting. I visited a nursery a couple of months ago with our early years director, and we were visiting a nursery in the southwest, and I think David, the manager there, told me that 14 of their staff
David's
he's got
a lot of learners doing the AEB route, and actually they're qualifying, and it's a great sort of model really that David's running there in the fact that you know that they are fully committed to getting through this route, and we're seeing them come through now, David's learners, and gaining their qualifications. So
they were very excited. We were joking about the fact that the local authority must be slightly frustrated with the fact that they've taken all the funding for the Southwest just for their nursery. But no, it was great to see, and the teams were really enthusiastic and positive about that route as much as we see our apprentices.
And you know, Realise they work with some other sort of big nursery providers, but we are their biggest user for the adult education budget. So we have got the most learners on that route with the highest success rate, and Realise feedback such amazing positive things about our nursery teams. So it's a bit of a mutual appreciation society, because the feedback that comes from the assessors about our nursery managers, the support they offer, and our nursery teams, it's really positive, and quite regularly when I'm having my calls with Realise, I'm getting that positive feedback about how wonderful our managers are and how they really look after our apprentices.
Haven't we got somebody shortlisted for Apprentice of the the year at our National Management Today Awards.
Yeah, so we've got Annie in Hitchin, that she's actually in the shortlist for Apprentice of the Year, so fingers crossed. Annie's a wonderful apprentice, and she's a very young apprentice. She joined us straight from school. She's just completed her level 2 actually, and gone straight into learning on level 3, so you've got that progression there, and it's a really exciting, wonderful thing to see.
I can see how proud you are of the apprentices that go through it.
It's just, I can't tell you how much warmth I get and excitement I get about seeing the
progression of
absolutely, and the opportunity to do that as well.
How many apprentices do we currently have at GrandirUK?
So we currently have about 189.
Wow, okay.
So that's a lot, isn't it?
How do you oversee them all?
We're building out our apprentice offer, and since I've been in this role, I'm trying to really build a community within GrandirUK of the apprentices, because I think it's really important that they're able to talk to other apprentices that have either completed and are doing the next level up or a similar level. But I think it's really building that community where they can talk to each other, where they can gain handy information. You know, how did you do this? Or I'm struggling with that. So I'm trying to hold these apprentice cluster meetings, and it is difficult to get round to them all, and obviously it's difficult for the apprentices to get to the venues sometimes, but the managers have been incredibly supportive. And what we have done in some regions is where the managers have their cluster meetings, they will bring along one apprentice, and the managers will have their cluster meeting, and I will take the apprentices and go into a different space and work with them. And actually that's really lovely, because on the travelling time, you know, the manager and the apprentice gets to spend some time together, and I think that the feedback from the apprentices has been that they really enjoy that. They really value the time that they get with their manager. They really value that they're being included in something like an apprentice cluster meeting, and they really love talking to other apprentices about their nursery environments, the challenges they face, their successes. So it's working really well. And we've also got the Facebook page, which is a virtual space for our apprentices to talk to each other, and myself and Mel from our HR team, she will look after the whole mental health wellbeing piece. She'll pop bits and information on there. Pop things on there that are handy to sort of know off the job, but it's a virtual space for them to sort of share,
which of course our younger apprentices in particular are used to, because you know that virtual online community is how our younger people are living their lives.
That's what they're used to. So it's and I think they like that they can post anonymously on there as well, because they might not have the confidence to ask a question. They might think it's a silly question, but you can post anonymously. I can't say that. And either myself or Gemma, who's our Realise account manager, she's absolutely brilliant in coming back straight away with that support.
Great. So how, if I'm a nursery assistant or an employee at GrandirUK in a nursery now, what would you say to anybody that's looking to join the programme or keen to qualify?
I would say do it. Do it. You can either phone myself and I'll talk you through like how we can get you onto programme. I can talk you through any questions that you might have, or queries or concerns that you might have about how you're going to cope with learning and working at the same time. We've also got our learning and development portal within the Grandir support office page. We've got something called Page Tiger, where the learning and development directory sits, and literally there is so much information on there. Angela, who is our head of personal development, she's worked really hard to put so much information on there and pull it all together so anybody can access it. The nursery managers can access it with an employee that might be interested in doing it, and they might want to look through and see what the different options are. Might be looking at doing the A/B route, or you might be looking at doing an apprenticeship, and then you can come and talk to me and we can take it from there. So it's very accessible.
Excellent, good. Wow, I can tell how passionate you are about the role that you do, and just from us, really grateful for having you lead on our apprenticeship and coordinator.
It's a privilege.
Apprenticeship and learner route, because as I said, we need more people joining our apprenticeship programme. We need to employ more apprentices to support our nurseries and to continue to raise that quality for the children and the families that we're so committed to delivering. Yeah. So really, really great to have you with us today. Is there anything before we wrap up the podcast session that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think just really talking about like that before point, before they're thinking about an apprenticeship, we're trying to do some work with schools. A lot of the schools will be offering childcare GCSE now. Yeah. So I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with the schools to identify those pupils that are really interested in childcare, because we have a lot of applications for apprenticeships, and actually it's a wonderful thing to do, but it's not easy. It's a hard graft, and some of the feedback that we get is it's a long day. As working in early years, you are governed by all sorts of bits and pieces. Regulations, that's the word I'm looking for. And it's a big thing to look after little people. So I think if we need to do a little bit of myth busting with people that are thinking about working in early years. I think there's this myth out there that you go into early years and you take on an early years apprenticeship because actually that's what you do, hairdressing or early years, that's what you go into. But actually, it's a really, really responsible role, a really wonderful role to do. But I think we've got some work to do with our people coming up through the pipeline to educate them about what it looks like to work in early years and really get that excitement and awe.
I agree with you. I think I've worked in the sector now for over 30 years, and we've seen a lot of change in the qualification levels, in the professionalisation of the sector, and I think I talk to our teams all the time about changing the narrative of early years, because it is a wonderful, wonderful place to work. It's not easy, it has pressures, there are regulations, it can be challenging, but I think a lot of it's about mindset and the nursery you work in and the leadership that you experience at a setting and colleagues around you, and it can be so rewarding. So I think, you know, the sector has been negative about itself for a very, very long time, and we have a responsibility to change that narrative, to welcome people back into the sector.
To excite people about it, because it is such a wonderful sector to work in. I mean, I can't think of anything better than working with these little people and you know, that's the feedback I get from our apprentices, is that what really excites them is that seeing the development of a little one that's taking their first steps, or a little one that's discovering something for the first time. It really takes you back to seeing the world through a child's eyes, and I think as adults we forget that, and I think where we've had this negative sort of narrative of working in early years for a long time, we need to change that. We really need to change that. So we're, you know, at Grandir UK was kind of hoping to lead the way on getting people excited and really bringing back that love of what it is to work in early years, and I think we're going to do it.
I agree. I think the government have a responsibility, and I think they're starting to take that seriously. We have a responsibility, and people like you who can excite and motivate people to join us and complete an apprenticeship programme with us is great. So thank you so much for being our very first guest.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for having me.
What we would do probably at the end of the podcast is just pop your email address and contact details on the slide, so that anybody that is looking to reach out and please do. Can get in touch. So thank you. That is the end of our very first podcast, and we will see you on the next one.